Right.
What that?
Go long way. I could have sit there.
Just blocking it for now.
Is there a thing to do that?
There, I can't find it, I don't know where it went. It's just What I had.
Where they lost.
How we doing, Linda?
It looks like maybe 617.
617. Near to the heart of God. There is a place of quiet rest, near to the heart of God, a place where sin cannot molest, near to the heart of God. Oh, Jesus, Redeemer, sent from the heart of God. Oh, God, to wait before thee, near to the heart of God. There is a place of comfort sweet, near to the heart of God, a place where we are Savior meet, near to the heart of God. Oh, Jesus, blessed Redeemer, sent from the heart of God. Oh, us who wait before thee. There is a place of full release, near to the heart of God, a place where all is joy and peace, near to the heart of God. Oh, Jesus, blessed Redeemer, sent from the heart of God. Oh, God, to wait before thee, near to the heart of God.
It doesn't look difficult.
You can try.
What she said. There is peace when we sing the Father's heart. We will find such blessed assurance in the presence of the Lord. In your presence, there is comfort. In your presence, there is peace. When we sing to God our heart, we will find such blessed assurance in your holy Heidi Lee.
My soul in its conflicts and sorrows goodbye. So sad, so weary, my now last rock of ages, hiding in thee. Verse 3. Often the conflict when pressed I have fled to my refuge and grieved out my home. How often when trials I see the control, have I hidden in thee, O the rock of my soul.
Announcements. August 29th, 10th anniversary, 1 to 4 in the afternoon here at the church, in the fellowship hall. September something or other, Stillwells will be with us.
22nd?
And November, the
27th, still.
yes. In November is the Snells.
No,
No?
September 20th is the Snells. November 22nd is the Stillwell.
See,
IMS is business meeting on the 6th next month.
business meeting on the
My
6th.
birthday. Yes. Well, I mean, if we're announcing the important.
Yes, that too. Oh, my wife's having one too.
Yeah.
Ends in a 0.
Oh.
Under his wings, 620.
Under his wings I am safely abiding. Though the night deepens and tempests are wild, still I can trust him. I know he will keep me. He has redeemed me, and I am his child. Under his wings, the promise of can stand. Under his wings, my soul shall abide, safely abide forever. Under rest. Often better that's go for my healing. There I find comfort and there I am rest. Under his wings, oh, from his love can suffer. Under his wings, my soul shall abide, safely abide forever. Under his wings, oh, what precious enjoyment. There will I hide till life's trials are o'er. Shelter, protected, no evil can harm me. Resting in Jesus, I'm safe evermore. Under his wings, oh, from his love can suffer. Under his wings, my soul shall abide, safely abide forever.
So tonight we're going to do some testimonies. We're going to have some camp testimonies, and then I'm going to give we might turn that down a little bit. Vacation testimonies. So that's the plan, or vacation testimony. Family's looking at me funny, like they might have to talk. All right. So let's have our campers come up and just what's that? Well, you do have to talk now, but not later. So, all right, campers, come on up. Make sure you can be seen by the video. There you are. For our people at home. Everybody wants to see your face. Okay, let's step forward a little bit. Let's get you all in there. Linda, you're still out. Why don't you? There you go. All right, there we go. Yeah, this way they can hear you too. All right, so step up to. There we go, around the thing. All right, and they can still see your pretty little face. All right, just a couple questions. So, favorite food? Speak loudly.
Garlic bread.
Garlic bread. All right, Kelsey, your favorite food?
Subs and tacos.
Subs and tacos, okay. And
Hannah's homemade rolls.
homemade rolls by Hannah. All right, very good. Okay, Katie, what was your favorite activity? Speak loudly.
I like dodgeball.
You like the dodgeball, all right.
A game called Razzmatazz.
Razzmatazz, okay. Can you explain Razzmatazz a little bit?
So there were 3 people and 4 bases. And you had a frisbee, a football, and a dodgeball. One person would take each, and you'd throw them out. And there'd be a bunch of people out in the field, and they'd have to take them and try to get them in the bucket as fast as they could before you ran around the bases.
Okay.
So you tried to run around the bases and then they tried to.
All right, so it's basically you're running bases like baseball, and you throw 3 different objects out there and start running, and you get as far as you can before they get the objects back. Okay, very good. All right, Razzmatazz. All right, Kelsey, what was your favorite activity?
Crate stacking.
Crate stacking. Oh, we had pictures of that. Go ahead. Here, maybe step up.
So there's 2 people who come together. Well, they're harnessed, and the goal is to try to get as many crates stacked up on top of each other while standing on them. So there's 2 people who are working together, and
They have them harnessed, by the way.
yeah, we're
So harnessed up.
and so you work together as a team and take crates and stack
Milk crates.
milk crates.
Mhm.
And stack them and try to get as high as you can in 5 minutes. And if you get up to 10, you get extra time. Just
So how high did you get?
10.
10 milk crates. So that's about, is that 10 feet in the air about? Pretty close. All right. Very good. Okay.
Did you have a favorite activity?
I don't know if it was my favorite, but my most amusing was seeing a bunch of junior age kids trying to catch pigs.
Pig catching, how fun, all right. Do you have a funny story you'd like to share?
Cody does.
Okay.
He visited me.
Oh, I see.
Apparently I was really
Oh, so Cody found humor in how tired you were when she visited you at camp.
kind of.
Okay. Kelsey, did you have a favorite or funny story?
Sort of, but I don't really want to do what's done.
All right, so she has a funny story that cannot be explained, so.
Well, it can be. So, at our camp, there were 4 different teams. And there were the red chameleons, the blue flamingos, the green tigers, and the yellow aardvarks. And at every meal, someone from each team would stand up and shout it, and everyone had their own little chant. My favorites were the red chameleons, because if someone stood up and did the red chameleons, everyone would get on the floor and, like, I don't know, be in the shape of a beetle or something. I don't know why, but it was hilarious because someone would shout, red chameleons, and everyone would get on the floor and be beetles.
Very good, all right. You have a funny story, that's fine.
No funny story.
Okay. What was your favorite sermon or thought from the week as far as what you learned?
I didn't really do a lot.
Okay. Did you have, I thought you had one specific. No?
One that was funny.
Okay, oh, you had a funny one. Okay, what do you have? Go ahead and share.
One day a guest speaker just came, and he was a ventriloquist and a puppet.
Okay, so funny puppet. Okay. Kelsey, did you have a thought from the sermons?
I liked all of them, but there was one saying they said, sin will take you farther than you want to go, cost you more than what you want to pay, and keep you longer than you want to stay every time.
Very good. So that saying stuck out in your mind. Yeah. Oh, she can't hear. Oh, go
I
ahead.
didn't catch all that.
Sin will take you farther than you want to go, cost you more than you want to pay, and keep you longer than you want to stay every time.
Very good.
What was the first 2 words?
Sin.
Sin will.
Sin. Okay, I didn't know who was going to take it.
All right, very good. Linda, do you have some thoughts to share as far as the?
Not one in particular. Our speaker was a Black man and very much spoke that way. He was loud and he was fast and he was very dynamic. But he was leaving from camp to go to Omaha to an Air Force base to talk about racial injustice. And I just thought, wow, what an opportunity, because I'm sure they got the gospel. There was no question about that. The man was passionate about the gospel, and I just thought, what an opportunity.
Well, anybody else have anything else they'd like to share about camp?
Finding snake skins in the room. No,
Oh.
I don't want to hear about that.
No, we didn't want to see it either.
Well, very good. Thank you for your testimonies tonight. I was sitting in a storm, which I will share with you tonight, and I thought, I'm just going to take a Sunday and share vacation testimony because I think there's some thoughts from our vacation that are worth sharing with you this evening. So I've entitled this, Vacation Chaos in the Hands of a Sovereign God. So that's the title for my testimony time tonight. And I don't know how well the people at home can see my slides up here. But I would like to talk and just give some thoughts about our vacation this year. And was a little chaotic. We started out, of course, with our plans. And one of the things just to think about is our plans. James 4:15 says, that it encourages us, of course, to commit all of our plans to the Lord. And our plans were considerably rearranged by COVID. Before we even get to the storm that happened at the end of our vacation, we had reserved a cabin, and this is the cabin, but we reserved a cabin up near Strawberry Point, Iowa. We were supposed to be there from Monday through Thursday night. And during that time, we're going to explore some of the beautiful parks and scenery in Northeast Iowa, including the caves and various other things. And then we anticipated going to Chicago to see Rob and Melody and hanging out a couple days with them. After that, we were going to go to Indiana and visit the Britons and see them and talk to them a little bit, and then go on to Michigan and visit Bill Quaistra. And so those were our plans. And of course, we were going to bum off a lot of people as we went, as far as where we stayed, yes, which was part of the plans as well. However, we became ill with COVID. And so with that, the quarantine itself took 2 days out of our cabin time. And so, and the cabin was rented after as soon as we left. So there was no changing that. We were just going to miss 2 days of our cabin time. And so we would not be able to arrive at the cabin until Wednesday evening, cutting our time there in half, which, I enjoyed the cabin, and God does what God does, but I certainly regretted not having those 2 nights. But then we also started looking at travel restrictions and traveling to see our friends, having had COVID ourselves and it being officially reported with the state and everything else. And when you officially travel to another state, you're supposed to come back and wait 2 weeks and go into quarantine again for 2 weeks. Now, of course, I'm sure many people don't do that, but that's what you're supposed to do. And having just had COVID and everything else, we decided it would be best to stay in Iowa and not leave Iowa for our travels. So, of course, that took out of our travel plans Chicago, Indiana, and Michigan, and also all our free places to stay, which not only affected our travel plans, but our budget. Which, of course, taking a couple days off of the cabin also helped that out. But our plans were changed and adjusted considerably from what we had hoped. And COVID took 2 days off of the front of our trip, and I'd like to skip to the end of our trip at this point, because the storm took 2 days off of the end of our trip of what we planned. Because when we arrived at my mom's house, another free place to stay in Iowa, we found Mom's house in quite a state after the storm. This is
What
the
day did you get to your mom's?
Monday.
Oh,
Monday.
Monday.
So it was Monday that we arrived there. And so in our plans and in our adjustment, we decided to go to Mom's house instead of Michigan. And so we arrived there on Monday, and we arrived to this. This is the top portion of a tree from her backyard. And so this entire section of 20, 30 feet, I don't know, flew over the top of her house, of course, hit the eaves trough, and then landed about 3 inches, I don't know. It was, yeah, it almost hit her glass door in the front. And so we arrived, Mom's yard was a mess, and I'll just share a few pictures with you. Mom's car was trapped in the garage, and you can see all the trees hanging over her garage here. So this is her lean-to on the other side of her garage. They had just come in and put in all of these white slats on Saturday in the fence. Mom had been waiting like a year to get that done, and my family came in. My family had come in, the rest of the family had come in Saturday and done all kinds of yard work, all kinds of things. And then the storm just comes in and destroys the lean-to, and of course makes a mess of her yard. And this is the tree. This is the other half of the tree. The front half flew over the house. It split into three. A third of it was still standing. A third of it had flown over the house. And this section had fallen and actually punctured a 2-inch hole in her roof that caused a little bit of leaking. So we arrived and we found Mom's house in some pretty rough condition here. And so this is the backyard, just a section. I don't know how many trees that were blown over. I would say 20 or 30 at least blown over in her yard. But as I think about this aspect of the trip, and so we spent the last 2 days of our trip, Monday and Tuesday, after the storm, helping her clean up. And some items of praise as I think about that. First of all, Mom and no one else was hurt in that storm. And Mom did get, obviously with the trees and everything else, some major damage. Mom's door was not busted and the damage was not more severe. The worst structural damage was to that lean-to, which again, it was something she used often, but it was not her garage and it was not her house. We were able to quickly patch the roof. But another aspect of that, as we think of God's sovereignty in all of this, was our arrival. We had planned to be in Michigan on this Monday with Bill hanging out, and we weren't going to come home from Michigan until Tuesday, and we were going to go straight home. Our plans had been changed because of COVID. And I think God certainly had his hand in this. When we arrived, Mom's phone had died. She had no power. Her car was blocked in the driveway and she had nowhere to go. She couldn't communicate with the family. She could not go anywhere. And so when we arrived, we were able to contact the family. We were able to let them know that Mom needed help. The last communication we received from Mom was several hours earlier, and she said a tree had landed in her front yard. The rest of the family had no idea what was going on. No one in the family realized how bad things were at Mom's, and she was without a cell phone, and they may not have known for a while. Then we were able to get busy and clean up the driveway, remove the tree from the buildings, patch the hole on the roof. And it didn't occur to me when we arrived and started working what it meant to my mom.
Oh, yeah. I can imagine.
Yeah, but later on she mentioned, she was not sure what she would have done if we did not show up when we did.
Yeah.
And now God would have worked things out some way, somehow, if it had not been us. But what a blessing that it was us. What a blessing it was us. We got to be used. We got to be the ones to show up in my mom's time of need and to be used and to help her out. We had the privilege of our trip being rearranged and messed up so that we could be up there at the right time, the right place to be a blessing to my mom, to minister to her in that time of need. And I was grateful for that opportunity. Living clear out here, we don't always get to be a part of the family days where they work to help Mom out. And sometimes maybe there's a little bit of guilt on my part for not being there as much for my mom as the other siblings are. But we got to be the ones. And what a blessing. I'm not sure right now why God took 2 days off the front of our trip, and I'm sure he has a purpose for that. But I think I know and understand why God rearranged the ending of our trip. And I'm thankful for that. And so that was part of, God's sovereignty, I think, in what we saw going on. And thinking about this, our 9-day trip was turned into a 5-day trip. Taking 2 days off the front because of COVID and the last 2 days because of the storm. And so our 9-day trip was knocked down to 5 days. And of course, the first 2 days, I'm not going to, I maybe dramatize a little bit. I did take those days as vacation. I was just at home instead of on the trip that I wanted to be. Yes, but we had a much shorter trip than we anticipated. But again, in thinking about God's sovereignty, I think we could all say about those 5 days that we did have, that they were everything we wanted them to be, and that they lined up to be, the quality of them made up for the loss of time. It was the trip we wanted. It was the trip we wanted. And so here we are, and I'll just share a few pictures about our trip. Here we are getting ready to leave, and so there we are, all smiles and excited. We went to several waterfalls, and I'm not sure. This one was just outside of Cedar Rapids, and so we climbed around and explored for a few hours and had a good time here. We went to the next, here's some more, I guess, of the waterfall. Just climbing around and enjoying the beauty there. Of course, we're always being silly. So here's the girls wrestling, and they were doing something with the side of the van there. I don't know. They're always doing something ridiculous or silly. We're getting pictures of it. Yeah, they were looking at their reflection on the side of the van there, trying to be fun. Then the Horse Thief Cave, we found the park with the Horse Thief Cave, and I guess this is where horse thieves went when they stole a horse. I guess that's how it's got its name. I don't know. We made a lot of jokes about, well, it's pretty stupid to go to the Horse Thief Cave after you've stolen a horse. Everybody knows where you're going to be. But anyway, that was the Horse Thief Cave, and that's we explored that for a time. Went on to the second waterfall. I think Bridal Veil Falls, is that what it was called? Okay, I put question marks because I couldn't quite remember the name. This was up in Pikes Peak State Park. I believe Pikes Peak State Park was founded by the same guy that found Pikes Peak in Colorado. He came here first and then went on, I think. Anyway, it's the highest point in Iowa, but it also has this waterfall. And we got all the family to walk behind the falls. And, here we are. Then here's the view from Pikes Peak State Park overlooking the Mississippi River. And so more hiking and exploring and enjoying the falls. Here's our cabin view, and pictures don't do it justice, but it was a beautiful, beautiful view, a nice cabin. This poor guy, I felt like we took advantage of him a little bit because he was charging us less for this cabin than we paid for any hotel room. Nice sized cabin, beautiful view. And so just everything that you need and you want to relax. Here's our waterfall number 3. There's the top of it. Down here you see the bottom of it. And here's the top of it. And we climbed all around there. We walked up through the falls. And then you can even go back up in there and see where it comes out of the side of the hill where the spring is at. This is the scary climb where one of my daughters I thought I was being maybe a little cruel when I made them climb it. But, they made it, and they developed some climbing skills as a result. But we climbed up into the cave there. The boy joins us for the fun. And, whoa! But you can see the waterfall stretching out there. And so then here's waterfall number 4. And I didn't have as good a pictures. This waterfall stretches all the way back up a considerable way and just kind of goes down through the side of the hill there. And of course, climbed all over that. There's Jaden. I don't know if you can quite make him out up there, but Jaden and Kylie standing at the top of a rock. This is us still exploring that same waterfall. There we're hanging out at the cabin, just a beautiful cabin, spacious. We enjoyed it immensely. It's just an excellent place to relax. And we explored LeClaire, Iowa, wore a mask everywhere. Some more caves. This was Maquoketa Caves, and here you can see Kelsey holding up a rock. Kylie and Jaden hiding in the cave, and there's Cody's feet sticking out of the cave she climbed into. The rest of the caves were closed, but we got to enjoy a few things and see them all. Then we went on the rapids. Yeah, look at that. Whoa, they had, they rerouted the Maquoketa River with a bunch of spots like this, about 5 or 6 spots, and you can take tubes down there, and we just spent a day on the tubes in the rapids, enjoying that, and that was Katie's favorite activity. So there we're at the storms, but again, for the rearranging of our schedule and taking 2 days off the front and then 2 days off the back of it because of the storms, those 5 days were about as perfect as they could be. And those 5 days were the exact trip we wanted. And I think we got back, were we just gone for a week? With everything we packed in and everything that happened, were we just gone for a week? We got to enjoy the Whippy Dip ice cream and campfires in the backyard of the cabin there. I got to take the family, and I have pictures here of Dubuque and stuff, but I took them to Dubuque, and the family got to tour my life as a child. And they were super excited. They got to see the homes I lived in, the schools I went to. The dogs I was attacked by, yes, yeah, my paper routes, man, I showed them everything. There's many hours of fun. I actually spared them a few places. Michael and I took Michael though. Michael and I went out later and saw those places. But just a good trip. God, for his divine purposes and reasons, shortened our trip. And again, I think I know why on the end of that trip, why he rearranged our schedule and shortened it. Not sure why he did on the beginning. But despite the abbreviation of the trip, our trip seemed to last a couple weeks in a good way. And being everything we wanted it to be and exactly what we needed. Especially in this time when our family is going to change dramatically. And so just thankful for God's blessing and thankful for that trip and his sovereignty and working all those things out for us to have a good trip. Then comes Monday. So we've 2 days off the front, 5 days of just exactly what we want. Monday morning, we wake up without much planned. We're going to end the day at Mom's house and take a boat ride with my sister and brother-in-law on their boat and enjoy the boat. That was the plan for the rest of the day. Michael had Googled a couple parks along the way, and we thought, well, we'll visit this park, and then we'll visit this park, and maybe see what some of these parks that we hadn't seen yet had to offer. And so that was kind of our plan, to wander through from place to place, and then get to my mom's and enjoy a boat ride and spend some time with Mom. As we set out driving, there was a small park on a map, and we went and visited it. So we got to spend some time at that park, and we hung out there for a little while. And we found another park, and we started to drive towards it. And as we were driving, about 11 o'clock, we got the first warning signs that something might be happening. My mom sent out a text and said that she wouldn't be getting any canning done today. My mom's always kind of cryptic or whatever. We had no idea what she was talking about. Michael suggested, well, maybe she lost power. Well, then pretty soon we get a text from my sister she sent out this family text. And the family text from Sharon says, I'm hiding in the basement with a very scared dog. They were watching Samson for us. I'm hiding in the basement with a very scared dog. My brother-in-law would tell me later that he never goes to the basement for storms, but when he saw a tree fly past his window, he decided it was time to go to the basement. So he went and hid with my sister and our dog in the basement at that point. But we started to realize that something big was happening, that it was a very substantial weather event. Now, we were northeast of Des Moines and Ankeny, and the storm was moving east, but we thought perhaps we were far enough north to avoid it. So we checked the radar and realized, well, the storm is probably coming our way. And we began to realize, again, from text and from the radio, that this was extremely substantial. Mom sends out a text saying that a tree just landed in her front yard. Had flown over her house and landed in her front yard. The radio says what, Katie? What did the radio say? Can you do it so well. Stand up, say it loud. What did the radio say?
If you are in any mobile home or vehicle, things will be tipped over. Death may occur. Take cover now. If you are near any building, go on the lowest, safest part of it. Take cover now.
She does it with such enthusiasm. Death may occur. And so we started, this was significant. Of course, we started making our plans. What are we going to do? And we checked the radar, and the radar tells us, now this is about 11 a.m., the radar tells us that this storm is actually moving rather slowly, and it won't hit like Marshalltown until 1:30. And so we've got a couple hours, we think. And we're trusting the radar that says this. And so I think, well, what can we do? What should we do? Well, the best thing to do, it's 11 o'clock. We're about 40 minutes from Marshalltown. Let's just get to Marshalltown, go to the mall. We can hang out at the mall during the storm. And the storm's supposed to last a couple hours, and so we're going to be there the rest of the day. But we'll eat some food, and we'll just walk around the mall. We'll be there. And so that was the plan. Get to the mall. We've got a couple hours. We can do it. And we trusted the radar. There was a thought in the back of my mind that, wait, Marshalltown is only about 40 minutes from my mom's house. It doesn't seem like the storm should take that long to get to Marshalltown, but we trusted the radar. And we started to drive to Marshalltown. And we drove, we got about 30 miles of the 40 miles covered. It became quite apparent that perhaps the storm was not going to last that long or wait that long. And so I decided that the speed limit didn't apply to me under these circumstances and decided to get to Marshalltown very, very quickly but we didn't quite make it. We were about 12 miles northeast of Marshalltown when the wind started. And this is pretty much kind of the scene we saw. This is not exactly where we were, but this is pretty much and this is further up the road. But we were driving down a road with trees on both sides and trees that could easily fall in the road. And we started seeing debris just coming in on the road. Little branches and things. And we realized very, very quickly that this was going to be a powerful storm. We were not going to get to Marshalltown. Again, the wind picked up, and I knew I was driving in a storm in a situation I've never driven to before. This is the worst weather situations I've ever had to drive in. And so we started moving forward slowly. I stopped at first, but then I realized, we've got these trees right here. If they blow down, they're going to fall on us. And sure enough, after the storm, we looked back where we had been, and some of those trees had fallen. Certainly would have damaged the car, the van that we were driving in. And so we got to move forward. We moved forward just really about 50 feet. And there was a kind of a break in the tree lines, and there was a church. What was it, a congregational church, I think? What's it? Oh, Brethren Church, yeah. And so the church, they had their driveway, and then the church there, the driveway paralleled the church, and I just pulled right next to the church, right over their sidewalk, and I parked my van right next to the parallel to the north wall of the church. And there was a door in front of us. And so the wind was coming from the southwest. And so we were on the north side of the church. And so all the wind was hitting the other side of the church building. And I felt we were about as safe as we were going to be. and we thank God for that because it was just an easy, right there. And I pulled in, I didn't even have to think or hesitate or make a plan. That's where I need to be. I pulled in. Unless it blew down the church, we were safe in that spot. Of course, there were still chances of debris. And so we sat there. We found out later that Marshalltown was the hardest hit area with 106-mile-per-hour winds. We were northeast of that just by 10 miles. So I don't know the strength of the winds that we were getting hit by. But I had to imagine that they were among the most substantial of the winds that would hit. After we found our spot and got settled, the first thing we did was pray. Thank God for that spot, prayed for safety. And then we sang a little bit, we talked a little bit, we waited a little bit, we called Keith and had a conversation with him about the radar because we had lost internet and everything else. He's our radar guy, so we called him. The storm was pretty extreme for about 20 minutes. It's calmed down, but there were still gusts of winds and concerns. We were there probably 40, 45 minutes just waiting. Very thankful for God's provision as we backed out. This is the road that we were on at the time. This is just a little further up. I thought I had a picture of the church that we were parked beside because in their yard there were 5 or 6 huge trees that had blown down. There's a picture up the road of where we had been, where there are trees in the road where we had been parked initially. And if we had to drive through up this road through that storm, we certainly would have faced quite a few falling trees and things, but we were able to have that break in the tree line and park by that church. And, as you look at this is what we saw all the way to Marshalltown. After Marshalltown, we were able to get on the interstate. But we got to Marshalltown, all of Marshalltown had no power. Nowhere in Marshalltown did we have power. We were a little low on gas. I thought about that at one time when we were sitting by the church. I thought maybe I should turn off the engine. But we still had a quarter tank, and that Marshalltown's 10 miles away. We'll be okay. But we got to Marshalltown, nothing was open. We're driving over down power lines and around trees, and there's emergency vehicles and a lot of traffic. I don't know if everybody needed to be out, but there were a lot of people out and about driving around. There was a Casey's store that lost power. They did let us in to use the restrooms at least. Otherwise, we'd have been a long time without a restroom. And some of us would have exploded, I think. But we're thankful to that Casey's store for letting us in to use the restroom, even though they were closed. We then proceeded from Marshalltown to drive 40 miles without seeing any gas station or anything with power. And I've seen that type of destruction before, but never that widespread. Never have I seen that widespread of destruction. And you really begin to realize what you went through. You knew it was bad, but then you start seeing the damage and the destruction. Well, I was sitting in a van and driving in my van when that hit. And the potential for just damage and things. So here you say, well, what's this? This is the church that we went through on Sunday. So this happened Monday, and I want to go back to Sunday real quick. We went to a church, obviously a little different than our church.
T-shirt and jeans.
Yeah, he's the guy with the he preached in a t-shirt and jeans, and of course their music was guitars and no drums, but they had the guitars. And, it was, like I said, it was a good service. And a challenging message, but he happened to be preaching out of Mark, and I'll take you there real quick.
Where's the people?
Where's the people? Well, this was before the service, yeah.
This is when the songwriter entered by doing a somersault.
to before the service started. But
I don't do that.
yeah, come on, Keith. And part of, thinking about God's sovereignty and all this, again, bringing us to my mom's house, allowing those 5 days to be exactly what we needed and exactly what we wanted, providing that church, that right place, that right building for our protection, but also providing this church and this sermon the day before the storm hit. And so this is the passage in the sermon that we heard Sunday before we went through this storm. And it says in Mark chapter 4, verse 35, "And the same day when the evening was come, he said unto them, Let us pass over unto the other side. And when they had sent away the multitudes, they took him, even as he was in the ship. And there were also with him other little ships. And there arose a great storm of wind, and the waves beat into the ship, so that it was now full. And he was in the hinder or back part of the ship, asleep on a pillow. And they awake him, saying unto him, Master, carest thou not that we perish? And he arose and rebuked the wind, and said unto the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said unto them, Why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith? And they feared exceedingly, and said one to another, What manner of man is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? You look at this passage, and of course there's the fear of the disciples. But one of the main things he brought out in this passage is the fact that they did the right thing at first, that they went to Jesus. You usually think about a sermon. What do you do when things are difficult? What do you do in the time of storm? You go to Jesus. Well, that's what they did. They went to Jesus, and they brought their concerns to him, and yet they're still rebuked. Why are they rebuked? It's not because they didn't come to Jesus. It's because they came to Jesus and they were still afraid, and they had fear in that storm rather than faith. And so the sermon and kind of one of the points of the sermon was about pivoting your perspective rather than seeking to change your circumstances. You're in the storm, and your perspective is staring at the storm, and you're staring at the storm and you're afraid and you're fearful. But if you will pivot and turn and look at God rather than the storm, you can have faith and you can have confidence. The situation hasn't changed, but your perspective has. You've pivoted. You've pivoted from staring at the storm to staring at God. And so these disciples, they went to Jesus, but they went to Jesus afraid rather than with faith. And they needed to pivot and stop looking at the storm and rather look at Christ and look at the Savior and look at God. A challenging thought. Pivot your perspective. Circumstance doesn't change, but you pivot your perspective. You look at God rather than the circumstances and the situation. And I very much drew upon that sermon. As soon as I realized that I was in a van with my family in an extremely dangerous storm that was approaching, one of my first thoughts was, we talked about this yesterday. We talked about this yesterday. And the need to pivot my perspective. Turn my eyes upon God. And very much consciously saying to myself, I'm going to remember the lesson of that sermon. I'm going to trust my family and their safety into God's hands. And I'm going to put my perspective upon Him. Put my attention upon Him, upon the God of heaven and earth who I profess faith in. And that sermon was the right sermon at the right time for those circumstances that we would be facing the very next day. We're very thankful for that. And again, so my testimony about our vacation is God's hand in all things, God's sovereign hand. God's sovereign hand in all things. Keeping us safe from these two scary guys that we saw in the store. That's me and Jamie. Giving us an opportunity to help my mom and be there for her. Spend some good quality time with the family, except for why is everybody on their phone? God's hand. He works things out. I still don't know why we lost 2 days off the front of our vacation. But, God has his plans. God has his purposes, and we trust God in all things. And so.
Tell them the name of the road we were by.
Oh, yes. And as soon as we left the church, the next road we came to was Vance Street. So I don't know if there's an association there or not, but anyway. You have your own vacation testimonies, don't you? But we are very thankful for God's hand and God's sovereignty in these things. Had a great trip, great vacation, despite all of the problems and difficulties. And we are just thankful to God for his protection and for his care through these things. Let's pray. Oh, Father, Lord, we thank you that you are a good God. We thank you that you care for us and that you love us. We thank you, Lord, that you are a God that we can trust. Lord, I pray that you would help us often to pivot our perspective and turn our attention to you. Lord, we thank you for the way that you work to rearrange our schedules, Lord, to change our plans, Lord, to better plans. And Lord, we pray that you would help us to trust you in all things. Your sovereign hand, as you work, you guide, you direct, and you fulfill your will for our lives. Help us, we pray, in Jesus' name. Amen. You're dismissed. Oh, well, I can see that.